All right. So we needed to continue the conversation because we were getting into the juicy bits and we ran out of time. So this is our part two, where we're gonna do a deep dive into menopause. And why are we talking about crone wisdom and menopause? Because it's related. Like if business is a mirror to who we are, then right, this is a stage of life, this is a phase of life, and it affects how we show up in our business and in all of our lives. So let's talk about it.
All right.
Welcome back, Amy.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be back for round two.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So it's really funny that we're meeting today because just in the last 24 hours so much has come into my field around menopause, like just stuff that I'm seeing online, obviously because online is listening to me and the conversations that I'm having, so it's giving me more stuff. But also just I had a conversation with at the women's clinic that I go to today. And I've been sharing with them, like, yeah, like my whole personality has changed over the last 6 months, and I'm kind of not loving it. So let's talk about doing something about that, because I feel like I am such a joyful person and I get so excited about entrepreneurship and business. And I just haven't felt that in the same way. I feel it still, but it's not the same. And it's not that I'm not open to change, but I just feel like it's been stronger than what I've wanted it to be. And I'm curious to just ask you, like, what has been your experience shifting into this crone phase of your life? What that transition has been like for you, and how has it affected your business, if at all?
I mean, I think there's like one of the things we were talking about in the first part of this was, my father's passing.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting thing because I'm the oldest child. And it was sort of like, oh, wow, I'm the one who's now kind of carrying on his name. I'm the oldest. I'm, I'm the first in line here, really. My parents are divorced, but like from his line, basically.
Yeah.
Um, and with this particular last name of Lorbati, there's nobody else that has it. He does have a sister who's still living, but she doesn't have the same last name. And I feel like there's more of a seriousness, almost like, if people have heard the term gravitas, like there's almost like a feeling of, I don't want to say weight or responsibility, but it's sort of like realizing that, your experience on this planet is finite. And what do I want that experience to be, what I have left? And and this is just a me experience. This doesn't have to be anybody else's experience, but the let's say the first 35, 45 years of my life were really on the corporate, like, really in the mainstream world.
Yeah, in the matrix.
In the matrix. I was completely in the matrix. I was climbing the corporate ladder. I didn't even the word spirituality, I think, has is fraught with a lot of problems. But I wasn't even in any of the worlds that, I've found myself in. I was 9 to 5, actually not, more like 9 to 8, was working a corporate job, was unbelievably stressed out, was exhausted, was drinking to cope, had, eating disorder issues, bulimia, just not living a happy life at all. And had really launched myself into a journey of spiritual discovery with the passing of my youngest brother. He died about 10 years ago. I just read in one of my journals. And that at that point in time, I really looked at his life and at my life, and I was like, wow, I am just living a higher class version of his life. Like, we're both addicted to substances. He was just living a much rougher, he was renting a room in someone else's mobile home. He was living in a trailer on the outskirts of Austin, on in like farmland in a whole different world. And but I was really realizing, like, wow, he's living a life just like I could judge him and his life, but if I look at my life, I just make more money and I live in a nicer place and I'm doing the same things he was doing, right?
You just have more
And
options.
I just had more options, right? But and you know, let's just say I could buy different drugs, right? Because alcohol was my drug of choice, right? So I could buy, I could buy different things, but my experience was the same, and that was 10 years ago. I was 46. I'm 56 now. And I'd say for the last 10 years, I've really been on a mission of personal growth and spiritual development. And it's been pretty much relentless. And I would say over the last couple years, this might be age related or not. I'm going to answer your question here. Over the last couple years, I really lost connection with my passion, which is personal growth, which is helping other people live lives that are not, stuck in the matrix or stuck. And it's almost like I found myself stuck in a little bit of a matrix of spirituality, right? And I lost my focus, right? I lost my connection to my passion and I was miserable. And I'm not saying this is you. I'm just saying this is me. And
Yeah.
I've been, and I really went into a dark place. Today is 60 days alcohol free today. Woo. And I'm not judging anybody who drinks or doesn't drink, and I might drink again. I'm not saying anything about it. But what I needed to do was extricate myself from that so I could actually tell how I felt.
Yes.
How do I was like, I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of depression, and I couldn't tell what it was related to. Is it age
Yes.
related? Is it because I hate what I'm doing right now? Because like I said, I really had lost my focus. I'd lost my connection. I'd lost my joy, and I was really stuck in the entrepreneurship piece, right? And so I feel like I've recently extricated myself from that and also coming off alcohol. And right now I'm coming off sugar too, because I ate a lot of gummy bears to get off alcohol. A lot. And I didn't look at the label. And my boyfriend, I was making him eat them because I was going off sugar. And he's like, he's not even into health at all. And he was sitting outside reading the label as he was eating. He goes, oh my God. He goes, the first ingredient is corn syrup and the second one is sugar. He goes, I can't believe you were even eating these. And I was like, oh my God, I've been mainlining corn syrup for 2 months, getting off booze. Like, and now I've got to get off corn syrup, right? Because, so it's like I've had a lot going on with my moods that, it's some work to tease out what is hormonal,
Yes.
what is the shit I'm eating.
And what is like fucking just like lifing and
Right,
you
right.
processing emotions, ancestral whatnot, right? Coming through.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
like I'm in the process of taking things out to actually be able to tell what's my actual baseline, what's my personality like, because I was also super addicted to, I don't even know what to call it. I mean, people say doom scrolling. It's just like,
Yeah.
like scrolling social media, scrolling news. And that was making me incredibly depressed. Like, I also think there's what happens as you age as a woman. And one of the things that we ended on in the last episode was, I think you ended it with, and then I started to disappear, and it's like, there's also, the realization as you're just walking through life trying to figure out who am I without drinking and without, also drinking corn syrup, or eating corn
Yeah.
syrup. And oh, also, and he was like, it has red dye number 40 or whatever the worst red dye is, it was in it,
Yeah.
right? I was just like, um, so what is chemically being introduced into my body? What am I feeding my brain with, like, because we're all addicted. Most
Yeah.
people are addicted to social media and to their phones, or to something on their phone. They're addicted to having some kind of distraction all the time. And when you
Yes.
take that distraction away, sometimes we get very angry.
Yeah.
And it's like it's also sort of navigating what altering either substances or activities am I doing that's taking away from my experience of being able to even process what's it like to start to be viewed as something different than what you have been viewed as for the longest time, which is, I mean, for me it was like being sexually attractive, being told I was pretty, being told I was beautiful, having people look at me, having people
Right.
pay attention to me. I still get attention, because
Yeah.
I have a particular personality and a particular energy that I move through the world in. So, people see me,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and they see me differently, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's been an interesting adjustment, is being seen differently.
Yes.
Um, and I'd say the other thing too is, now what's my role?
There is a
Right? And
change in role, right? Do you feel like there's
yeah,
a change? Yeah.
and identity.
Yeah. There's a
And
whole
I think,
identity shift.
yeah, and I'm gonna, like, I love archetypes. I work with archetypes, and I work with witch, bitch, whore. Witch and bitch and whore are three of the archetypes. And I think one of the things that had made you want to reach out to me to have the conversation, I mean, besides everything, but one of the things was because I had said, I'm reclaiming Crone. And
Yes.
and on that post that I did that you had seen, where I said, because, like, I work with some of the worst, like, using a judgment term, the worst shadow archetypes. Crone is a pretty not great one. I mean, you could also call yourself a hag, right? Which
Right.
might which might be worse. I'm a hag, I'm a crone, I'm an old spinster, whatever, like,
Right. No,
negative
right.
old.
No good connotations there.
Yeah, like when a woman gets old, like, you become useless unless you are doing childcare for somebody else's children or cleaning, and also just shut up and sit in the corner.
Yeah.
Like, don't speak, because if a woman's voice, and I'm using gender here, but if, because it's been going on for fucking millennia,
Yeah.
like, I'm
Yeah.
I'm not going to pretend like the last, 5 to 10 years changed anything. It didn't change much. It's like, women's voices have not really mattered. Women's needs haven't mattered. Women's happiness hasn't really mattered. Like, you're supposed to find your source of joy and happiness is supposed to be in your children, in taking care of your man, doing community related things, taking care of other people's children, having a smile on your face, looking pretty, and shutting the fuck up.
Yeah.
Is
Ultimately shutting the fuck up. Yeah.
Yeah, just please shut the fuck up, right?
Yeah.
And I think that there's an interesting thing that happens when women get older. As you are stepping into a new identity, not one you're necessarily choosing, but one that's being put on you by society. And I don't know if this is hormonal, like, when you stop bleeding, you also, or at least my experience is, I started to give less of a fuck about what people thought about what I had
Yes.
to say.
Yes.
Now this is historically, I've not given as much of a fuck as what people thought about what I was going to say, even when I was younger, but even more so,
Yes.
right? And it's
Yes.
like, so then you have a woman who now doesn't give fucks as much about what people think about what she says.
Yeah.
And then they start saying things, and people are like, shut up.
Exactly. Exactly.
You don't
Yeah.
matter. Why are you
Right.
talking? Right. And then you don't give a fuck. So you're like, I'm not going to stop.
I'm going to get louder.
I'm going to get louder. And then it's like, now they have a problematic older woman. Right. So what are we going to do? We're going
Then
to have
you're
to
Amy, then you're not just a bitch, you're an old bitch.
you're an old bitch who doesn't care. And you're not even, and then like, I'm thinking with a patriarchal mindset here.
Yeah.
And you're not even good for fucking at this point. So what point is there for you? Right?
There's no use for you.
There's no use. Why are you still here? You should go into the woods and die.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it's
Exactly.
like, you are like, I'm exaggerating, but not really.
Not
You
really.
are now an entity that is really not desired by kind of the mentality of the patriarchy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman or a child, or someone who's non-binary. It's like, it doesn't matter who you are. You also have been conditioned subconsciously, unconsciously, consciously by the patriarchy to also believe that. So if you are an older woman, you might really just start fading into the background because I don't matter. No one's
Hmm.
listening to me anyway. So it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter how I take care of myself. It doesn't matter how I show up. It's always harder for me because now nobody cares because I'm not even getting the attention of just walking into the grocery store.
Exactly. Exactly. And we can disappear ourselves.
Yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of women do disappear themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use, it's not necessarily stop caring about themselves, but it is in a little bit. It's sort of like, I'm not even going to make the effort to be visible because my evidence or the results is that I'm not. So why bother?
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
the zero fucks goes always. It
Yeah.
goes in all directions. It's like, you don't see me, I don't care. I can show up invisible. I can walk through this space and nobody will notice me. I can walk through this. It's almost like you
Yeah.
put on an invisibility cloak.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And what I've been feeling and what I've sensed from you, just kind of following you online, is that our wisdom, like what we know, the wisdom we hold, just increases exponentially as we transition from maiden, mother, goddess, whatever, into crone energy. And I feel like this is a time, crone, the crone phase of life is a time of tremendous wisdom when we're then faced with that patriarchal shut the fuck up, why are you even talking, where we come up against that very energy, like our energy of just like, I give no fucks anymore, and then coming up against this invisibility of like, why are you still here and talking, like get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Right.
So I've kind of, this was inspired by a comment that was made on this post that I posted. I think I said this in the last episode where I basically posted it so my partner would stop giving me a hard time about my gray hair. I was like, if I make it public, then I can't go back.
Yeah.
Not, I mean,
Yeah.
I could obviously, but I was like, while he was talking to me about it, I was like, let me just write this post right now. You'll see that later. Um, and somebody wrote, because I said I was claiming Crone, and it was interesting to hear my mother's reaction. She's not on Facebook, but I was talking to her about it. And she's like, "Oh, honey, you're not a crone." Like, "No, not yet," And I was like, "No, mom, I'm serious." Like she was trying to be like, "Oh, honey, everything's fine. Pet, you're not too old." I'm like 83. I'm old. Nobody's looking at me. And so I was like, "No, mom, I'm serious." And someone wrote a comment on the post saying, "I wish there was something in between mother and crone."
Mm.
And I mean, her version was erotic high priestess, like
Mm.
erotic high priestess. And I was like, of course, I want that in there too. And I was thinking to myself, I didn't write anything back because I just kind of let people comment on the thing because it was interesting to see the different comments. Some people are like, yeah. Some people were like, I hate it when people dye their hair anyways, and you shouldn't wear makeup. You know, those guys, right? Where it's like, I like it all natural. And it's like, no, you actually don't, because I know that's not true. I know you. Like, like that's not true. And then, you know, there were other people, you know, talking about like, I can't not dye my hair because I have the wrong color gray, or I have, you know, there was like, you know, self, you know, disparagement. And I sat there and I'm like, what she doesn't know is that the way I'm reclaiming Crone is as erotic high priestess. So everybody can sit the fuck down.
Mm.
Because there is this, when doing the, at least the kind of reclamation work that I do,
Yeah,
how do you reclaim whore? Right. And it's like, I
right.
mean, there's a lot of ways you can. And,
Yeah.
you know, or bitch or witch. I get a lot of resistance from people saying, why would we want to reclaim something like that? And I'm like, it's really about redefining it. And I really feel that the category of, I don't even, whether we call it crone, whether we call it matriarch, whether we call it, you know, the great mother, whether we call it the wise woman, you know, the wild woman,
Right.
this wisdom that comes from walking 56 years on this planet, which is
Yes.
not even anywhere near my mother's 83 years of wisdom. Now, she might not have had the same experiences, and she might not be interested in, you know, reclaiming anything, or just be like, I totally support you, honey, but I don't know what you're doing. Um, go for it. But it's like this, to me, it's an opportunity to completely redefine what the fuck that means.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
it's like, what can I do in the next 25 years or more? What, like, if I was going to say, I don't care what everybody on earth thinks. And look, there's plenty of cultures, I think, that might, you know, have more respect for their elders than, like, you know, the United States and Europe are, generally speaking, youth oriented
Yes.
cultures. So to me, it's an opportunity. How do I completely redefine this? How do I completely redefine what it's like for a woman, you know, in her older years, mature years, crone era? How do I redefine that for myself?
Right.
You know, and there's physical things that are happening in my body that I don't have any control over, right? And you know, they can be managed probably with, you know, bioidentical, which is the same thing as synthetic hormones. It's just slightly better. It's like, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
you know, so there's opportunities that you can do with interventions. But I think one of the biggest tragedies, um, for women, and again, all the focus on the younger thing, you know, the younger women, and you know, if I have a particular look and people want to feel younger, look younger, be younger, they might be more inclined to listen to somebody younger. But the
Yes.
reality is, you know, there's an incredible richness and wisdom, and like, at least for me, I've had an increase in my intuition, an increase in my ability to make, you know, sort
Yes.
of divine connections. You know, I basically live, I'm looking outside my window. I live in the forest, right? So there's trees all around me,
Yeah.
like connection to nature. You know, it's almost like right now I feel like I'm both retreating from the world and also stepping forward into it, but in a different way.
Yes. Yes.
Right? So
Yeah.
it's like, it's in our world, we don't really have, I don't know, almost like ceremonies, like transitions, like to allow you to
Precisely.
welcome into a new identity, and whether you're seeing your personality change and you're like, I'm not used to this yet. I don't like this yet. I don't know what's going on. This isn't comfortable for me. Or we don't have almost anything for anyone who's stepping into this, let's call it reign, right?
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
Crone era. Like, and
Yeah.
to me, these should be, this is my opinion, amongst the years of greatest power.
That's exactly what I'm trying to bring home on this episode, is that this is a moment of leadership and power and self-dominion, right? This sense of sovereignty, like
Yeah.
I yeah, like standing in your power. And this is the moment where we are relegated as obsolete, where we are asked to step out or step back and make way for the 30-year-olds. And I'm just like, oh, hell no. The 30-year-olds get to stay, but I get to stay too. I
Right.
have shit to say. And whether it's through my business, through my parenting, whatever, right? But I feel like, yes, there have been times over the last year where I felt like, where I've had that thought in my head where it's like, yeah, maybe it's time for me to step back. Maybe it's time for me to retreat. And what I keep coming back to is like, no, I need to be seen. I need to be heard. I need to be seen. I need to be heard. I have shit to say, right? Like I keep coming back to that over and over and over again. This is my time to say the things that nobody else is saying.
Yeah. Right. And as you are claiming it, because I'm hearing you, I'm witnessing you say that, right? And it's similar to me, as you are saying that, as you are deciding that, as you are doing that, the world we live in will do a lot of things to try to push you out of the way, or to push you back and to be quiet, or even
Yeah.
people. I mean, I'm barely on TikTok. And I posted a video of me, one of the very few things that's on TikTok of mine. There's a video of me dancing in a pair of gold panties and a pink fur bra. And this was like 2020. So I was
I think I
52.
remember that outfit.
Yeah, I was 52. And I mean, I look good, right? And I remember
Yeah.
some guy, the first comment I got on that video was, put some clothes on, you old hag.
Oh my gosh.
And I looked at
Wow.
this person, and it was a very overweight older man. And I was like, what are you doing, sir? What are you doing? Like, you're going to judge me on my body, which honestly, objectively looks amazing, and my dance is amazing, and I'm amazing. And you're sitting alone, I'm making up stuff about him, in your house, just like throwing acidic bullshit on women online for pleasure,
Mhm.
right? Or like, this is how you're spending your afternoon. It's like, what are we doing as humans?
Mhm.
It's like, why are we not celebrating this era? Because everybody's going to get here. I hate to break it to people who are 30 or 40. You're going to turn, if you're lucky, you will become 50 and
Yeah.
60 and 70. And if you're really lucky, 80 and maybe 90. And you might live to be 100. And then what? Because we've created a category of humans that are not of value.
Yes, exactly.
And, so it's like, how do I, as my own revolution, bring a different example of what it means to be a woman in power in her 50s, in her 60s, in her 70s? What does that look like?
Yeah.
And I mean, we're trying to figure out what that looks like in our 20s and in our
Yeah.
30s, let alone any other age. But I think to me, it's kind of like this wild, and there are women who are doing work in this arena, for sure. But to me, it's this kind of wild, unexplored, possibility rich environment of, what does it mean, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And how do I show up, right? Because it's stepping into more leadership. This is what I believe, right? It's stepping into more balance, right? Like, less reactivity. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it in a way that is respectful,
Yeah.
if I can. It's respectful to the person I'm speaking to, and also respectful to me.
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's a navigation is,
Yeah.
how do I hold myself energetically in the face of all kinds of craziness going on in the world, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like old is, I hope you die old and alone. You're an old hag. This is like things that get said to women, right? You
Mm-hmm.
know, you're dried up, um, you know, useless. And, as some of that stuff is actually kind of happening in my body, like you do dry up a little bit. And it's like, what do I do? Now I'm becoming this thing. And then it becomes like a mental mind fuckery, right? Like vaginal dryness happens. And it makes me angry because my body's not working the way that it used to. And then it's almost like I feel like I understand what it's like to have erectile dysfunction. I'm like, fuck, my body's not doing what I'm used to it doing
Yeah.
in certain circumstances. And again, this is a whole bunch of shit that isn't really talked about very much anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like this whole, what we're essentially talking about is initiation, right? When there are changes in our bodies, we are invited to be with those changes, to relate to those changes, and to let them move through us, right? And what I've been feeling over the last few years, subtly, right? And then like much more intensely, is rage. And sometimes when I really tune into the rage, I can sense that, yeah, some of it is mine and a lot of it isn't. That I'm tapping into a collective rage. It's almost like I'm feeling the rage of all the old women who were told to sit the fuck down and shut up. This is what is moving through me. Like, this is the energy that's moving through me. And that's kind of what gets me in moments of just like, oh no, I need to be visible. I'm going to be visible. I'm deciding to be visible online because I can feel all the old women who were told to shut up and who were told were irrelevant. I can feel them like spurning me on, like egging me on to like, hey, do it, do the thing, say the thing, and so I feel like there's a lot of medicine in some of the emotions that we feel, and that we can use it in service, right? That we can, through our business, through entrepreneurship, like communicate that into the world as well.
Yeah. I just think I mean, I guess, in a way, if you can, you should. If you
Right.
can take up space, you should. If you can um have your voice be heard, you should. And also I think that there's a lot of acceptance, really deep, deep work around acceptance, right? Accepting that
Yeah.
this is what my face looks like, accepting that this
Yeah.
is what my body looks like, accepting like, I look in the mirror and it's like I can see my mom, and it's like it's it's such an interesting experience, right? And
Yeah.
seeing the lines and in a world filled with filters and basically airbrushing of almost all the images that are going out there.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I be real in a world full of fakeness?
Mm-hmm.
How do I, do I need to find like a different style of dressing myself, right? Like it's like everything.
Yeah, everything, like, yeah, how you show up, just like what you were wearing before is just like no longer relevant or no longer fits your this new identity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely have never heard anybody really talk about this in a particularly public way. And I mean, yes, people have written books, and yes, I'm sure, people do workshops, and, I'm sure there's people that work in this area. Even people who are listening to this, like, I do this, but just kind of on a broader, societal, cultural level, it really isn't that talked about. Like people, I mean, they don't really tell you much about anything, to be
No,
honest,
no.
in the world we live in, but especially this, because it really is an identity shift. It really is a change. And I think you'd have a lot more support, or I could be wrong, but it almost feels like there's more support if you're like, you know what, I'm shifting to non-binary than if you're like, you know what, I'm just gonna be an older woman. Like people are like, whoa, what's that? That's like revolutionary. Like you're not allowed to do that, ma'am. So it's like it's such a I don't know, it's like this taboo thing to be, it's like, and you're supposed to know
Well,
your
yeah.
role.
Well, because everything, even as we enter menopause, there are interventions to prevent us from going into menopause. Like it needs to be medicated. It needs to, we need to add hormones to it to make sure that it doesn't happen or that we delay it, right? It's all this like thing that we want to push away. And I think that like my message here is that, yeah, like there's parts of this that feel pretty gnarly, and there's parts of my 20s and 30s that felt really gnarly that don't feel gnarly now. For example, like I don't question my worth at all. I don't believe the collective bullshit about me that I used to believe, that I wasn't good enough, and that I don't believe any of that shit. And so that gives me this totally different license and permission to speak, to be in the world. I don't have as much social anxiety as I used to. Like I have like 90% less social anxiety. I'm just like, I'm my fucking self wherever I go. And I've been noticing that it's like, oh yeah, I don't give a fuck anymore. Like I just talk to people the way I talk to everybody. Like I'm not filtering parts of myself out to make myself more palatable because, oh, I'm talking to this person and not that person. I'm just like, no, like all those filters are, I feel like are like I've dropped them. So there's this initiatory process of like, oh, this is really beautiful. There's some hard pieces, right? Changes in our body, changes in personality that we may not expect, that we may experience as a loss. And that's kind of any stage of life involves losses and gains, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think because there's such a stigma, and like you're saying, there's so many interventions to look younger, to feel, different, to not, I mean, I basically have been completely unmedicated, with regard to, any kind of hormones, whether that's wise or not, I don't know, but I just kept thinking to myself, yes, and also for hundreds of thousands of years, people, if they lived, and maybe people didn't live as long, maybe they didn't live past 40, right? So
Yeah.
they really didn't have to, and to experience, some of the things that we do now because we're fortunate to live as long as we
Yeah.
do. And so I'm just like, there has to be a purpose to this, right? And
Exactly.
you know, sometimes like hot flashes, it's just like I don't have them as bad as I did in my early 50s, but it'd be like I'm about to destroy everything. I'm gonna I'm like I can't stop it.
I feel like there is a lot of destructive energy in the crone. I feel like there's a lot of like, like when you clear the table, when you just like clear a path in the woods and you're just like this mama bear and you're just like, rah, and you're just like toppling trees and kicking shit to the side. I feel like I'm in a lot of that energy. And a lot of the stuff that I'm throwing away is just like, yep, I don't need that. I don't need that. I don't like that anymore. Nope, 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 nope. And I'm feeling so much no that it's making room for this new yes, right? A more like focused yes that is maybe like maybe fewer yeses, but like, yeah, I'm just feeling, oh, I want to clear that path. Oh yeah, I don't need to deal with this anymore, and I don't need to deal with that bullshit anymore. It's just kind of, yep, you're out. No apologies. I don't need to explain myself. That there's something there that feels really like good, and that's part of the power.
Yeah, because I think, with age, like this is like an actual saying, with age comes wisdom. Like, hello, really? Does it? Thank you for that obvious statement. With age comes wisdom, right? You've seen things enough times You've been asked to shut up for enough years. You're like, it's almost like you see the cycles, it's like you see these different people who are in power, and it's like, I'm going, it's the same shit, different person speaking it. Like, it's the same sort of pandering saying, oh yeah, women have rights. No, do we? Do we? Like, do we have the same rights? I don't think we do. Are we treated in the same way? No, but it's like, oh, but things are different now. And it's like, they really are and they aren't. There's kind of the same thread is still there. And it's like, you might be wearing different clothes, you might be doing different things, but the same repression of people's rights is still happening. And I think, once you've seen the same cycles for enough times, you're like, okay, I'm sorry, but I actually have to say something. And I'm not okay with what's happening. I'm actually not okay with this treatment. I've had this treatment so many times that I'm done, right? So
Mhm.
your ability to just say, this is out, rather
Yeah.
than just going, oh, I can fix this, I can shift this can change. It's just, I think there's a lot of clarity that comes from, experience, and it's a balance not to fall into prediction based on, what you believe has happened or what the evidence that has happened, but it's also, having the clarity to go, okay, I'm gonna call it like I'm seeing it right now. And also, I'm willing to be wrong here, or I'm willing to have something be different, so it's, I don't know, I guess it is kind of like an all hands on decks. Let's clear everything out that's no longer working for me, because I'm no longer willing to be uncomfortable like I have been for my whole life.
Yes, exactly, exactly. We just don't put up with shit anymore, you
Yeah,
know,
I was like, yeah,
and that can really extrapolate just not just in from our personal in our personal immediate lives, but also politically, socially, like activism, like our willingness to not put up with systems and codes that don't work for us. I don't know, I just feel like even thinking about what's happening politically now, like I feel like women of our age have so much power in being able to say, this is a clown show, like you old motherfuckers need to sit down and shut the fuck up and make way for this, right? Like yeah, I don't know what else I wanted to say about that, but it's just like just calling bullshit on politics, calling bullshit on, stuff that happens online, in online business, in, right? Because we've been around long enough to witness the patterns, to see the trends rise and fall, we have that zoomed out perspective that younger people may not have, simply because they haven't been through as many cycles of death, rebirth, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too that I think that I've realized that the older that I get is I actually know way less than I thought I did. And it's really interesting to think how much I thought I knew when I was in my 20s and 30s. I think like, kind of like when, well, at least for me, once I got into my late 30s, early 40s, I started to go, wait, I don't know anything, and but I was real sure, you know, in my 20s and 30s how things were. So I think that it's an interesting thing. You know more, and you also realize that you don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah.
So it's a lot of, I feel like it's bridge burning, bridge walking, bridge right. You're like, I'm navigating, these two worlds, and kind of trying to figure it all out here. Um, it's just it's an interesting to me balancing act also.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel too. I feel like there is, in some ways, I feel more hardened because I feel like there's shit that I've just experienced and there's things I know. So it's kind of like these are my non-negotiables. I just know myself. So sort of where I like draw lines. But then there is that softening of, yeah, there's a lot I don't know. And so that keeps me open, and that keeps me receptive, and that keeps me in this place of like, yeah, let's just see what happens. So
Yeah.
it is that play between sort of like, oh, I know myself, and yeah, like life is a mystery. Like we're just going to stay open to whatever wants to happen.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I feel the most grounded and centered and accepting of myself and a lot of other things now than I think I ever have been. There was a lot of self-rejection. There was a lot of self-rejection when I was younger,
Yeah.
of not looking right or not being right or not having the right, body or, the right things or whatever. Now I'm just like, you look great. Like I'm just I love myself so much more now.
Yeah.
I'm so much more, I mean, I self-satisfied.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I'm just like I've spent enough time with myself, now. It's like
Yeah.
I feel like I know myself better. I feel like um yeah, and there's like a different kind of confidence, I think, too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the part that gets missed, is this confidence. It's like that was so hard won, like when you walk this spiritual path, right? When you are initiated into spiritual work, you're having to burn away all of the parts of you that don't believe in yourself, that doubt yourself, right? And you get to a place of confidence finally where you're like, you may not you may not feel like you know all the things, but there's things that you really do know, and most of that has to do with you. And that
Right.
is a really wonderful place to be, is and that's sort of what contributes to the not giving a fucks, is the
Yeah.
confidence to say like, if somebody rejects me, I still have me, right? And that's enough. Like the love that I have for me is enough to hold me in whatever rejection is going to happen, right? And
Yeah.
that is like so potent, especially when we talk about business and saying the truth and being transparent and being bold and being visible. That is priceless.
Yeah. And I think, just being visible at any age, it can be challenging for people who identify as women. I mean, it can be for anybody, but
Yeah.
because again, why are you taking up space? Why are, and it's almost like when, women, female bodied humans tend to be easy targets. It's like people are always like, they'll come after women more online than I think that they will men sometimes. And it's just like,
Yeah.
so to even show up anywhere, it's already a thing. And then it's okay, now I have the confidence. And it's also, I find this with myself. I'm like, going, I wish I looked younger. Sometimes I still have that like, oh, this is what my
Yeah.
face looks like now. If I take a picture and I'm like, oh God, I don't know that I want to post this, and it's just like, but this is what your face looks like now, you
Exactly,
know?
exactly. Like this is just what it is now, and we're gonna post that because that's your face,
Yeah.
and this is a face that needs to be seen.
Yeah, because I think that, the three common um insults that women get, right? Like fat, ugly, and old, right? Like they just
Yeah,
love to throw those. Like it
yeah,
doesn't matter if you're any one of those, those tend to be included in part of it, right? Like,
right.
oh,
Yeah,
you're an ugly old woman, or, fat old woman, or you're an old woman, or you're old, or,
and the
you know,
translation is unfuckable.
right,
Yeah,
right. You no longer serve my needs.
right. Yeah, of propagating the species.
Right. Like if you can't have babies and I can't fuck you, or I could fuck you, but I'm not interested. It's just like this whole, it's like, are you fuckable or not? And it's so fascinating to me because this is my from the outside looking in, interpretation of men. A lot of men don't give a shit. They don't care. They're just like, ah, if you can get it, great. If you can get a woman who's 40 years younger than you, amazing. Right? It's like zero problems. But
Right.
it's like it's almost inconceivable that a woman would be 20 to 40 years older than a man that she would be with. It's
Yeah.
impossible. But it's totally normal. People just go, "Oh, he must have money." Right? He must have money. It's
Exactly.
like there's so much transactional relating in our world.
Yeah.
Do you have money? Are you fuckable? Both. What are we looking for?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, yeah, I kind of feel like if you are always a little bit of a rebel, you know, throughout your life, as you get older, I think that rebel streak just gets
It just
turned
gets,
up.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's why you and I are having this conversation.
Yeah. And I think that to me there's an art to
Yeah.
it. And it's like, how can I make this art? Right?
Yes,
How can I make
exactly.
this art? And if that helps anybody listening, just go, how would I make it art to reclaim Crone as a high priestess or just as a regular Crone?
Right.
Just a
Right.
general garden variety Crone. You know? How can I make this art? How can I make my expression art? How can I make my appearance art? How do I want to dress?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I think that is always the question. That is always the bigger, right? The bigger expression of self. How am I going to make this art? That is like my whole philosophy. And that's where we take our life force energy, right? We put
Yeah.
that, right? That the expression, the creativity, the art, we sort of bring it out through our through this transformational experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Because and I think that why it can be confusing, confounding, um, upsetting is because I'm used to making art a particular way. And
Yeah.
now I'm being called with my art to do my art possibly with a different identity,
Yes.
possibly with a different voice. And so I'm evolving my identity and my expression at the same time that I'm doing it, right? And it
Right.
has, in a certain way it hasn't settled and maybe it never will. I don't know. But
Right.
it's like it really is. I'm doing improv and I don't know what I'm doing. And so that I don't know what I'm doing because I've never done this before and I have no real good role models. Right. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of, I'm not going
Yeah.
around. Right now, I'm not even thinking of any good role models. So it's like, I get to be the role model,
Exactly. I get to pave
and
my own
whether it's
way.
just for me.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
that would be this is kind of where I'm netting out on this conversation.
Yeah.
It's art and you are expressing as you're evolving into this new identity that you don't even know what it is yet and you have no manual and there's no real guides around you because it isn't really presented because most of the time most people become invisible and you don't
Yeah.
see them anymore.
Exactly. Exactly. Bravo. This is a perfect place to end this conversation. And of course, there's so much more to say, but I feel like we really hit the points of really being in a transformational phase and sharing it in a way that feels right as a unique and honest and transparent expression of who we are and where we are in this path of life. And I really just appreciate you sharing your story and being so open about like who you are and it's always such a pleasure to connect with you. So thank
Well,
you.
this has been two very fun conversations
Yeah.
and yeah, to everyone, just remember you are the art. And even if you're just making the art for you,
Yeah.
That's all that counts, you know, and if other people appreciate the art, great. But you can be like a zero fucks artist and just do you.
Exactly, exactly. Beautiful. Thank you, Amy.
Bye.